Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaban bikum. Welcome to another episode of Essential Rules of Tajweed. Today we will be learning the masail regarding the recitation and touching of the Qur'an. Remember we said masail means laws or rules. Rule number 1, it is rewarding to always read the Qur'an with wudu. So we should try and make sure that we are in a state of wudu whenever we are reading the Qur'an, even if we are not touching the Qur'an whilst reading. Rule number 2, it is permissible to recite the Qur'an without wudu. So, it will be permissible for you to recite the Qur'an without wudu, provided that you are not touching the Qur'an or any ayah of the Qur'an with your bare hands. Rule number 3, it is not permissible to touch the Qur'an without wudu. So, if a person is not in the state of wudu, it will not be permissible to touch the Qur'an or any ayah of the Qur'an without wudu. So, very important, not permissible to touch the Qur'an or any ayah of the Qur'an without wudu. Rule number 4, if a person does not have wudu and the Qur'an is wrapped in a cloth cover or bag, then it will be permissible for you to touch the cloth cover or bag, provided that it is not attached to the Qur'an and can be easily separated. For example, if the Qur'an is wrapped in a cloth like this and it is not attached to the Qur'an, then it will be permissible for you to touch the cloth. In a similar manner, if the Qur'an is in a cover, then it will be permissible for you to touch the cover if the cover is not attached to the Qur'an like this. We can see that the cover is not attached to the Qur'an. Now it will be permissible for you to touch the cover. But on the other hand, if the cover is attached to the Qur'an, like we can see here, the cover is attached to the Qur'an, then in this case, it will not be permissible for you to touch this cover because it is now attached to the Qur'an. Likewise, if the Qur'an is inside a bag, then it will be permissible for you to touch the bag. Rule number 5, it is not permissible, very important again, it is not permissible to touch or recite the Qur'an in the state of janabat. So, janabat is a major state of impurity where a person requires a ghusl. So, if a person is in the state of janabat, then it will not be permissible for that person to touch the Qur'an or recite the Qur'an until the person takes a ghusl. Again, janabat is a major state of impurity where a person requires a ghusl. Rule number 6, it is permissible for a lady who is teaching the Qur'an and she is in the state of haid, that is her monthly period, it will be permissible for her to read the Qur'an one word at a time. And this will be done without the niyyah of tilawat. She will just make the intention of teaching and then it will be permissible for her to read one word of the Qur'an at a time in order to teach. Rule number 7, a person reading the Qur'an should not be greeted. So, if a person is reading the Qur'an, we should not greet this person. But if someone greets a person who is reciting the Qur'an, then the reciter has the option to continue with the tilawat of the Qur'an and not reply to the greeting at that time, even though replying to a greeting is wajib. Or he can stop with the tilawat of the Qur'an, reply to the greeting, and then continue with the tilawat of the Qur'an after reciting ta'awudh. So after replying to the greeting, he will say, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, and then continue with his tilawat. Rule number 8, It is permissible for us to download the Qur'an on electronic devices like computers, laptops, iPads, tablets, smartphones. It will be permissible for us to download the Qur'an on any one of these devices. The rules for touching the Qur'an will be the same when reciting the Qur'an on these devices. But remember, very important, we should try as far as possible not to take these devices into the toilet. And if one has to take the device into the toilet, then we should make sure that the Qur'an app is closed before taking the device into the toilet. And lastly, it is not permissible to use the Qur'an or any ayah of the Qur'an as a ringtone. This brings us to the end of another episode of Essential Rules of Tajweed. We will continue in the next episode, Insha Allah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The book that I am using for reference is called Essential Rules of Tajweed. Visit www.lma.org.za for more information.